Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. It is a rather chilly, gloomy April day today. A little unseasonably cool. And so I thought it was a good day to sit down, read a book, and discuss some of the books I've been reading recently in the first quarter of 2026. Some of these books I've already read. Some of them I will be reading soon, but I hope you enjoy, and let's get straight to it. One book that I just finished reading recently is Intermezzo by Sally Rooney, Rooney. Rooney. I have read most of Sally Rooney's other works, including Normal People, Beautiful World, Where Are You? She has another one. Conversations with Friends. Yes, I've read that one as well. This follows a kind of classic Sally Rooney style in that there is a romance and it gets complicated, as Sally Rooney romances often do. Intermezzo follows the story of two brothers, Peter and Ivan, who are living in Ireland. And Ivan is a chess semi-prodigy. He's in his 20s, so his prodigy days are kind of behind him, but he still makes his money playing in chess tournaments. And Peter is a lawyer, and both of them get involved in romances that are complicated for various reasons. One of those reasons being a significant age gap with their partners. Peter is dating a much younger girl, and Ivan is dating a much older woman. So some complications arise there. Additionally, Peter and Ivan's father has just died, so they are dealing with complicated feelings of grief and remembering their father, and in some ways remembering their father differently from how their other brother remembers him. This is very much a character-driven novel. The plot is fairly mundane, but not in a bad way. It's just normal people going about their lives, dealing with kind of real life challenges. There's no fantasy, there's no sci-fi, there's nothing supernatural. It is just the story of everyday people living their lives. But I finished this fairly recently. I really enjoyed it. I have enjoyed Sally Rooney's other works as well. So if you liked conversation with friends or you liked normal people, you'll probably like this book as well. Another book I just finished reading is called, it's upside down. It's called Thinking with Assent. Thinking with Assent by Maria Rosa Antognazza. I work at a university, and one of the big perks of working for a university is that you can take classes for free. So I decided to enroll in a graduate level rhetorical theory course. And one of the assignments was to write a book review of a book related to philosophical or rhetorical theory. And so I chose Thinking with Assent. Thinking with Assent. This book tackles modern problems related to epistemic and doxastic knowledge. Epistemic knowledge is essentially like hard knowledge, facts, logic, etc., whereas doxastic knowledge is knowledge that is kind of belief-based, belief-oriented. And so Antognazza in this book challenges what had been previous assumptions of the differences between knowledge and belief, essentially saying that knowledge is not a species of belief, but in fact knowledge and belief are two wholly distinct things. You can know something or you can believe something, but the way that we arrive at those two different conclusions are very different. I will admit this book took me a very long time to get through. That's why I have not read many books this year. I came into this book with very little knowledge of philosophical theory. So I definitely had to do some catch-up in reading the first section of the book and spent a lot of time kind of Googling terms that I didn't know. It's a very dense book. It's written for academics and philosophical experts, so I'm not necessarily the target audience. If you're interested in this topic, I think this is a very interesting account of modern philosophical thought, and it really challenges some assumptions that people have made in the past about knowledge and belief and episteme and doxa. So if that sounds interesting, check it out, but it is a very challenging read, or at least it was for me. Definitely had to use a lot of my brain power in order to understand some of the concepts that this book delves into. So yeah. The book that I just finished reading is called Small Game by Blair Braverman. Smallgame. Now, I was interested in this book because I listened to a podcast called You're Wrong About, on which Blair Braverman is a frequent guest. Some of the episodes that she has been a guest on are some of my favorite in that podcast's history. She did an episode on the miracle in the Andes, which is very interesting. She did an episode on Alex Russell, I think his name is, the man who was the subject of 127 Hours, which was very interesting. And Blair Braverman is a bit of a survival expert herself. She has competed in the Iditarod, and she competed on the reality survival show Naked and Afraid. So, Small Game is the story of a survival show gone wrong. It follows a woman named Mara, who is a competitor on a new survival show called Civilization. Mara has lived off-grid for almost her entire life, so she is very confident that she can win the prize money and make a better life for herself. However, a week or so into the survival show, something goes terribly wrong, and the contestants are left to truly survive. I won't say what goes wrong or give too much away, but essentially it's about a survival show gone wrong. I thought it was interesting. I read it in just a couple of days. The prose is written in a very straightforward manner. I wouldn't say it's the best book I've read recently, but I did find it very engaging, and I got through it pretty quickly. I am interested in survival stories. I don't really watch survival shows, but stories like The Miracle in the Andes, things of that nature, I find really fascinating. And so it was interesting to read a fictional account written by someone who does have kind of survival experience, even though it's in a more controlled setting on a survival show. I think she's written a biographical book, a memoir about her time living on a glacier, so I might check that out next. But overall, I enjoyed this book. It was a fairly quick read, and I was impressed with it as a debut novel. The book I am reading currently, I actually just started yesterday, is called Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang by Kylie Lee Baker. As you can see, I just started it. I'm only 2 chapters in. But this book was recommended to me via Reddit because I had enjoyed the novels by Stephen Graham Jones, which I've talked about in other videos. This is a horror novel set during the COVID pandemic that deals with the anti-Asian American violence and hate that was prevalent particularly during that time period, and the anti-Asian sentiment that came to a head during the COVID pandemic. Follows Cora Zhang, who becomes a crime scene cleaner after the death of her sister. And I don't know what happens next because I haven't read it. I know that it's a bit of a ghost story, so I don't know if her sister's ghost haunts her, if other ghosts haunt her, but I think it is a tale of haunting, maybe a revenge story, much like Stephen Graham Jones. But it's interesting reading a book set during the COVID pandemic because I really haven't. I've read a few books that kind of address the fact that it happened. Even in Intermezzo, they make reference to it, but it's just in passing. But this explicitly is set during 2020, with COVID being a huge part of the story. It's the reason that Cora becomes a crime scene cleaner, because she loses her job due to the pandemic. It is the catalyst for a bunch of this anti-Asian violence that occurs during that time period, against which the story is set. So I'm excited to see what twists and turns this novel takes. So we'll see what happens. And then on my to-be-read list is Catabases by R.F. Kuang. Catabases, R.F. Kuang. I have read several books by R.F. Kuang. I've read her book Babel and her book Yellowface. And so I'm not quite sure why I picked this book to read, because I can't tell you whether or not I enjoyed Yellowface or Babel. I thought that they were well written. I ultimately enjoyed them, but I felt like both of them had kind of some fatal plot holes that really took me out of them. And so it made them fairly unsatisfying when I was done with them. I feel like both of them I enjoyed until about 2/3 of the way through, and then the endings just kind of fell flat for me. So we'll see how I feel about Catabases. Catabases is the story of two graduate students who are studying in the field of magic. And their academic advisor, or their supervisor, dies. And so they follow their advisor into hell in order to get them to either finish advising them or give them a letter of recommendation or something like that. It's very satirical, kind of take on the living hell that is being a grad student. I think that's kind of what she would say. So they say his recommendation is the key to her future, and he could hold her dreams in his now incorporeal hands. With nothing but the records of Orpheus and Dante to guide them, bundles of chalk to draw the pentagrams necessary for their spells, and the burning desire to make all their academic trauma mean anything, they set off across hell to save a man they don't even like. So they are trying to bring their academic advisor's spirit back from the depths of hell in order to get a letter of recommendation. I do think that's a super creative concept. I am intrigued. I'm really interested to see what take R.F. Kuang puts on the myths of Orpheus or Dante. R.F. Kuang is incredibly well read. She is either currently or recently graduated from a PhD program at Yale. She's very accomplished. I think her writing style is quite interesting. But sometimes I think her endings fall a little bit flat. So I'm sure I'll enjoy the first half of this book. We'll just see if she can stick the landing. And then my last book for today is called Year of No Garbage. Year of No Garbage, Recycling, Lies, Plastic Problems, and One Woman's Trashy Journey to Zero Waste. So this is a memoir, I guess, about Eve Schaub. So this is about the author's attempts or journey to go zero waste, which I think is a very admirable goal. It says Eve O. Schaub, humorist and stunt memoirist extraordinaire, tackles her most difficult challenge to date, garbage. Convincing her husband and 2 daughters to go along with her, Schaub attempts the seemingly impossible, living in the modern world without creating any trash at all, for an entire year, and, as it turns out, during a pandemic. In the process, Schaub learns more than she bargained for, that modern recycling is broken and single-stream recycling is a lie, that flushable wipes aren't flushable and compostables aren't compostable, that plastic drives climate change, fosters racism, and is poisoning the environment and our bodies at alarming rates, as microplastics are being found everywhere. This startling and fact-filled memoir is for everyone who wants to decrease their personal garbage footprint, but would rather Eve do it first and tell you how. So I think this is a semi-humorous take at the zero waste problem. I have not read anything else by Eve Schaub, but I think she's kind of a humorist, so hopefully it'll be a fairly lighthearted take on a very heavy problem, which is waste and personal consumption. So I just saw this at the library. It wasn't something that was recommended to me. I just came across it at the library and thought it looked interesting, so I added it to my to-be read list. So that's it for today. If you've read any of these books and have opinions on them, I would love to hear it. If you have recommendations, I would love those as well. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. For now, good night. Good night. Good night.